Today we're going to be working on a review of slope and lines. There's a lot to this. We're going to go relatively quickly. You can pause it whenever you need to, but we're going to go ahead and go through quite a few different things. So we're going to start off with finding the slope between 2 points. Now some of this was done perhaps in class. If that's the case, you can fast forward to the new stuff in your notes. Okay, first of all, remember that if I draw a line, the slope is the change that occurs from one point to the next on that line. And there's an infinite amount of points, so if you pick any 2 points, the slope is the change that occurs. So for this example, as you can see from the 2 points, the top of the slope is the change of y. In this case, it would be 8, and that's just counting from -5 to 3. The change on the x-axis is the bottom. So in this case, that's 4, and that goes there. Notice I didn't say +8, -8, +4, -4. I'm just counting. Okay, the next thing I need to do is I need to decide, is my line a positive or a negative line? Every line that goes up to the left like that is a negative slope. What I like to imagine is if there was a little person walking here. Okay, if they're walking and they're walking left to right, they're walking downhill. Okay, a positive line would look something like this. That would be them walking uphill. So again, imagine my little person. I'll make a little red person this time. Okay, this one walking left to right would be uphill. So it's very important that you keep track of that. In this case, this is a negative, and the last step is to simplify. -8/4 simplifies to -2/1. So that's remembering how slope works. Okay, however, what if I'm not given the slope? What if all I have is 2 points? So basically, I have these 2 points here, 2, 3, and 4, 9. What I want you to notice here is what it says up here. Remember that every point is of the form x, y. So this is my x, which is 2, and my y, which is 3. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use what's called the slope formula. The slope formula says we're going to subtract our y values on top, which are 9 and 3. Okay, and that's going to give us 6. On the bottom, we're going to subtract our x values, 4 and 2, which are going to give us 2. At that point, you simplify. 6 divided by 2 is 3/1. Okay, so it's very simple. You don't have to worry about positive or negative. If the answer is negative, then you'll have a negative in your slope. So for example, if it was 3 minus 9, then we'd end up with a -6 instead of a positive. Okay, so now we're going to look at another example here. So again, we're going to go ahead and make a fraction. On top, we're going to subtract the y's, which is either 2 minus 10 or 10 minus 2. And on the bottom, we're going to subtract the x's. Being careful here, because when I actually take 2 minus a -2, that ends up being the same as 2 plus 2, because minus a negative is the same as adding, which is then 4. Simplifying out, I get 2/1, or 2, as my slope. Okay, I'd like you to try this one on your own. So if you haven't already done this in class, pause the video, give that one a try real quick, and hit play when you're done. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and subtract the x's first, the y's first on top. Again, I always go right to left, so 7 minus 8, which is -1. On the other one, I'm going to go ahead and subtract the x's, 4 minus 10, which is -6. When you end up with a negative on top and bottom, basically what happens is they both cancel out and turn into positives. Negative divided by negative is positive, so you end up with 1/6. All right. Next we're going to do is we're going to practice graphing in slope-intercept form. So if you don't remember, I like to think about slope-intercept form like a set of instructions. You have a starting point, you have directions to get to the next place, and that'll get you to your final destination. Without the starting point, you don't really know how to give directions. And directions are no good without a starting point. I can't just say, go up 3 blocks and turn left, go 2 blocks, unless I know where you're starting from. Every piece of those information has to be given. So here's how it looks. In order to get to your next point, you have to start off with directions combined with a starting point. Starting point is the very first thing you need, and then you can give it directions. So let's look at the formula y equals mx plus b. Instead of our next point, what we really have is the y value. Our directions are really our m, which is our slope, and our starting point is our b, which is the y-intercept. Okay, and so using that information, I kind of want you to think about that. When I go to graph, the first thing I should do is put my starting point, and then my slope will tell me my directions. All right, so let's look at a first example here. First thing I need is I need my starting point. My b is my starting point, which is -1. That means 0, -1, because every y-intercept has 0 for x. I'm going to plot that point on my graph. Okay, now I'm going to follow my direction, my slope, the number that's in front of x, -5. So first of all, in order to do directions, I need a rise and a run. So I need to have it as a fraction. So the way I write that is -5 on top and 1 on the bottom. So any whole number, you can put a 1 on the bottom. Okay, my rule of thumb when I graph is to always go up the top number, negative or positive. So I'm going to go up 5. Okay, that takes me to 4. Now what I do is I ask myself, do I want my line to be downhill, negative, or uphill, positive? In this case, I want it to be downhill. So what I need to do is I need to go to the left, because that's the only way when I plot a point, it's going to end up making a line that is downhill or with a negative slope. A good practice is to do it one more time, up 5 again, left 1 again, and that way it gives you an easier time to draw your line. Connecting those with a line, and you are done. Okay, so using that same process, go ahead and pause the video and try this one. Okay, so first off, we'll start off with our y-intercept. The y-intercept is 3, which means that's a 0, 3, and that means my first point is on the y-axis at 3. Next, I need my directions. My directions are 3/4. What that tells me is I'm going to go up 3, because I always go up, and then I'm going to go to the right 4, because this is a positive slope, so I want the line to go uphill. Again, I don't want to remember rules. I want to be thinking about which way should my line be tilted, left or right. And again, that's the uphill, downhill for me. If you have another way of doing that, that's fine, but you need to know your positive and negative slopes really well. And at that point, you're done. Okay, we're going to try one more. Go ahead and pause the video. Okay, the important thing to know here is that we have a y-intercept and a slope, even though there is no number in front of x. So we're going to start off with our -2. That's our y-intercept. Now what we need to do is we need to figure out our slope. A lot of people think, oh, the slope is 0. No, it's not. Every time you have a number x by itself, what you really have is an invisible 1 in front of it. Okay, so anytime you have an x by itself, you can even just draw in a 1 there if you want to make sure you don't forget. So that means I'm going to go up 1, because I always go up, and then to the right 1, because this is a positive x. Doing that one more time yields me 3 points, and I can then make a nice straight line. Okay, so we're going to try one more. What I want you to think about on this one is, were there a number to be added on as a y-intercept, what would that number be? So pause the video, give it a try, hit play when you're ready. Okay, here, your y-intercept is actually 0. A lot of people make the mistake, they forget that if there is no number added, no number is still a number, it is 0. So what that means is, it means my y-intercept is at 0, 0, which is right dead in the center. And my slope, -3/1, which means I'm going to go up 3, because I always go up, but I need to turn to the left because I want my line to be a negative line. Doing that one more time. And then drawing a line to create my straight line. Okay, next we're going to learn how to graph in standard form. Graphing in standard form is a little bit different than graphing in SlopeIntercept form, because when we graph in SlopeIntercept form, we have two pieces of information. We have our starting point and we have our directions, which is the y-intercept and the slope. When we talk about graphing in standard form instead of y-intercept form, it's a little bit different. So my starting point is my y-intercept, just like before, and my ending point is actually the slope. However, we could also get the x-intercept from this. What we're going to learn now is we're going to learn how to quickly find the slope using standard form, meaning how do I quickly determine what my slope is, and then I can do it just like y equals mx plus b form. Another really good skill is to be able to rewrite standard form into y equals without having to do a bunch of work by simply calculating the slope really quickly and then finding the y-intercept. Okay, so first off, to find the slope, we're going to use a shortcut. The shortcut is opposite of a over b. Very quick shortcut. So to practice it, let's look at an example. Okay, first thing, identify your a and your b. In this case, my a is 4. So therefore, opposite of a would be negative 4. So this is my a right here. So the opposite of that would have to be negative 4. And this is my b right here. So that's why down below you see negative 4 instead of negative a, and 2. Again, don't think of it as negative a, even though I just said that. Think of it as opposite, because if it is a negative, it turns into a positive. So after that, you simplify negative 4 over 2, which simplifies out to negative 2 over 1. And that's it. You have the slope. Okay, so what I want you to do is pause it. Just quickly find the slope for each of these three. It should only take you a moment. Okay, so first thing on the top one, my a is 2 and my b is negative 8. So I end up with the opposite of a over negative 8, which simplifies out to 1/4. On the second one, the opposite of negative 5 is positive 5. 5 is b, so 5 over 5 simplifies out to 1 over 1. And the last one, the number in front of x is a 1, remember, imaginary 1. So it's a negative 1 on top and a positive 3 on the bottom. That can't be simplified, so you're good to go. The other piece we need is our y-intercept. In order to find the y-intercept, all we have to do is set the x equal to 0. So when I look at my problem here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to be taking x, this x value, and in essence, setting it to 0, which means putting it away. So I'm basically crossing off my x each time, and I'm solving that one-step equation that's left over. So let's look at our example again. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be plugging in x for 0. When that happens, though, 4 times 0 is nothing, so I'm just left with 2y equals 12, which is a very simple problem. Divide by 2 on both sides, and I get y equals 6. So like I said, when most people do it, what they end up doing is they just eliminate the x value, so they sort of cross that off and solve the one-step equation that's left over. In that case, my y-intercept is 0, 6. So as you can imagine, we've talked about how what you really need to graph is a slope and a y-intercept. So you can see it's very quick to calculate the slope, very quick to calculate the y-intercept, and we can easily graph the line then. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just really quickly practice this. Just try to cover up the x value and find the y-intercept of each. So pause the video and do that. Okay, so what we're going to do as before is I'm going to just basically cover up all of my x values, and I'm going to solve those one-step equations. On top, you'll end up with negative 8y equals 16, which gives negative 2 as your answer. On the next one, I'll have 5y equals negative 20, which gives negative 4. And the last one, 3y equals 9, which gives you 0, 3 as your y-intercept. Okay, so now let's put it all together. Let's go ahead and graph this problem here. So 3x plus 2y equals 12. First thing I need to do is determine my y-intercept. Just like before, I need my starting point. So to do that, I'm going to cover up my x value and solve the problem. And I get y equals 6. I can now go ahead and plot that on my graph and move on to my slope. Remember, slope is opposite of a, so negative 3, over b, which is 2. Now applying that, that means I'm going to go up 3 to the left because it's negative 2, and I've got my point and I can draw my line. Okay, because I want you to practice writing in y equals form, down below where I have the mx plus 6, I'm going to go ahead and fill out the whole equation, which is negative 3 over 2x plus 6. Okay, we're going to go ahead and try another one. Again, start off by finding your y-intercept, and then find your slope. So go ahead and pause the video, give this one a try on your own, and hit play when you're ready. Okay, so starting off with the y-intercept, we're going to solve this problem right here, which is x substituted for 0, and that's going to give me y equals negative 6. Okay, next moving on to slope, I'm going to take the opposite of negative 12, which is positive 12, over negative 4, which equals negative 3 over 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up 3 and left 1, and that is my line. You should have now completed the equation y equals negative 3x minus 6, or y equals negative 3x plus negative 6. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to say, how do we write the equation of a line if all they give you is the slope and a point, or if they just give you 2 points and they don't even give you the slope? And we're going to tie in what we've learned from the other stuff. First, here's an example. Write the equation of the line with a slope of 3 through the point 2, 3. Starting off, I already know what my slope is. It tells me right in the problem. So, for example, I can immediately put in the m part. What I don't know is that missing b part. Okay, I don't know what goes in the right side of my equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remember that every point is of the form x, comma y, and I'm simply going to substitute that 3 in for y and substitute that 2 in for x right there. So where I see a y, I'm going to place 3, and where I see the x, I'm going to place the 2. From there now I simplify. 3 times 2 is 6, and I subtract 6 from both sides to get b equals negative 3. That negative 3 then is going to go directly into my equation, and I am done. And that's it. So we're going to go ahead and give another one a try here, and I want you to follow along with the notes you just did. Pause the video, give it a try. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to write in the part we already know, which is we know the negative 4. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to substitute in our values. So instead of x, I'm going to put negative 1, and instead of y, I'm going to put 5. Multiplying negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4, and subtracting 4 from both sides, I get b equal to 1. I can now complete my equation, and I get y equals negative 4x plus 1. Okay, go ahead and pause it again. Try this example. I want to help you out with this. When you multiply something by a half, it's the same as cutting it in half or also dividing it by 2. So pause, hit play when you're ready. Okay, so we're going to set up what we know, which is that there's a 1/2 there, and we're going to substitute in the values. X equals 6 and y equals 7. If I take half of 6, or 6 times 1/2, I get 3. Subtracting 3 from both sides, I get 4, and my problem is done. The hardest thing they're going to give you is if they give you 2 points only, meaning they don't even give you the slope, they just give you, write the equation of the line through the points 2, 7, and 3, 9. The only reason I say this is hard is because there's a lot of steps. So going back to the first part of this video, when we learned the formula to solve for the slope of a line, we're just going to do that. Once we have our slope, then we'll be able to do exactly what we just did on the last set of problems. So starting off, we need to determine our slope. We're going to use the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which again means subtract the y's on top, subtract the x's on the bottom. So I'm going to end up with 9 minus 7 on top, which is 2, and 3 minus 2 on the bottom, which is 1. At that point now, I know my slope is 2, and I'm going to do the same thing I did last time, plug in x and y. One of the questions that comes up is which point do I have to use? Do I use 2, 7 or do I use 3, 9? It does not matter. You can use whichever one looks easier for you. I'm going to go ahead in this case and use 2 and 7. I think I did that because the numbers were smaller, but it doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to simplify 2 times 2, which gives me 4. Subtract 4 from both sides, which gives me 3. And now the problem is complete. My equation is y equals 2x plus 3. Okay, so go ahead and try this one on. Remember that what you need to do is you need to find the slope between those 2 points and then use that information to set up the rest of the equation. Okay, so first thing, let's find our slope. 4 minus 0 on top, and then 4 minus 5 on the bottom, which gives me a slope of -4. From there, I can plug in whichever point looks easier to me. I decided on 5, 0. -4 times 5 is -20, and adding 20 to both sides, I get 20 is equal to b. The problem is now complete, and I can move on. Okay, so we're going to try another one on your own here. Okay, remember on this one you're going to get a fraction again. So remember that when you multiply something by a third, it means divide by 3. If you multiply something by -1/4, it means divide by -4. So be careful about that and proceed with the problem. Okay, let's go ahead and start off finding the slope using the slope formula. It's going to be 3 minus 4 on top, and -4 minus a -8, which is the same as +8 on the bottom. That gives me a slope of -1/4, and I go ahead and plug in my values. And I plugged in -8, 4. -8 times -1/4 is +2. Subtracting 2 from both sides, I get b equals 2, and the problem is done. Okay, so what I want you guys to do now is go ahead and take that poll down below, answer the questions so I can make sure you're understanding what's going on, and give you credit for watching the video. Make sure the notes are complete and ready to go, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.